All right, my guest today is Marty, a Georgia realtor with 5 years in the business who built her brand through YouTube and social media. She went from part-time to full-time in her very first year and is now ranked in the top 5% of Atlanta realtors and closed 30 deals in 2025 because she's amazing. She's also a wife and a mom of two and has built a thriving real estate business while keeping family at the center of her life. Marty, I am so grateful and excited to have you here. So thank you so much for your time. I'm
Thank
excited.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad that we got to do this. I know that we've tried a couple
I
times.
know it's been a while.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get together.
I love it. But so I'm okay, my first question. You've been licensed for 5 years, but what
Mhm.
made you decide to go all in and transition from a part-time realtor to going full-time?
Well, that was always the goal. I mean, I hated my job.
Yeah.
It wasn't always like that. I loved what I did. I was working at a grocery store. I started as a cashier. I worked my way up into corporate and then I went to store management. And towards the end of my store management career, it got really political. It got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
Every time there's like leadership changes higher up, the culture of your environment changes sometimes, and there's a lot of things that happen. It just made me not want to be at my job. And so when I was just like at my wit's end. It was this one night I was coming home from work. Like I remember it vividly. I was crying and I was praying like, God, what is it that I can do? Like I want to do something that I love or I want to make a hobby into a career, but I don't have any hobbies. And my husband told me shopping is not a hobby.
Uh,
So really, the only thing I
I
like to
disagree.
do, that's exactly. But I digress. That's what you said. Shopping is not a hobby. Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
But the only things I like to do is shopping and watching HGTV. Like those are the things that I could name. And like I literally said that. And it came to me like real estate. I can be a real estate agent. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like it came to me as like I felt like God spoke to me in that moment. And I talked it over with my husband, and he's always been an entrepreneur. He's always had his own business, and he was like, I think that's a great idea. And I was like, cool, I'm going to take this course. I'm going to quit my job, and then we can live off my 401k for the rest of the year. And then he's like, no, 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 you can't do that. I was like, no, I'm trying to get out today.
Yeah. You said I could.
Yes, you said it was a great idea. I told everybody, I was like, yeah, I'm about to quit my job. And this was when I was saying this was February of 2020. Okay.
Okay.
February 2020. Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. My mother-in-law was like, you have a baby, like you're making money, like you can't do that. You have a family. My mom was like the same way. Everybody was like, no. I was like, no, trust me, this is it. I got enough, like we're gonna be
Yeah.
good. Then I was going to turn in my 2 weeks notice and COVID hit.
Oh no.
Yes, I was like, maybe I should stay where I'm at. And
Right.
so in between that time, I did start taking a course. So I was doing my studying for the license and all that kind of stuff. So when COVID happened, actually my work life got better because it was just like focusing on just doing your job, none of the politics, none of the stupid reports that we had to do. It was just like
Right.
me doing my job, the things that I like to do. So it actually got better and I got moved to a better store and I was like, oh, this is great. My course, I was still continuing to do that, but it got a little slower because at this time at this job, I worked 50 hours a week.
Okay.
Then in June of that year, I found out I was pregnant. So then it kind of slowed down and yeah, I was just like, I knew I wanted to do it. So I was just doing it at my own pace. And I got passed up later that year in 2020. I got passed up for an interview for a job that I was highly qualified for. They just skipped over me and other people in the interview process because they already knew who they wanted to give the job to. And when they called me to tell me, not only did I not get the job, I didn't even get an interview. They were going to go with someone else. And I'm like, wait, I didn't even get an interview.
Yeah.
So my HR manager, he was like, yeah, we're going to pick someone else for this position. Like, keep on doing what you're doing. I was like, okay. I hung up the phone. I told my husband, I said, hey, because we were living in Savannah at the time, and I was pregnant with our second child. We already had a 2-year-old. I was 7 months pregnant at this time. And I was like, we're going to move back to Atlanta. I said, let's sell the house. We're moving back. I'm just going to transfer to a store in Atlanta because thankfully I could do that.
Yeah.
And he was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm tired of playing these games down here. I don't want to be in this district that I'm in. We'll just move in with my mom
Yeah.
who just
Yeah.
bought a new house, and we'll figure it out from there. And so he was like, okay. So literally that day, hung up the phone with my HR, called our old realtor at the time, and said, hey, we want to put the house on the market. And she was like, okay. Within 2 weeks, the house was on the market. Like, I was playing no games. So yeah, that we moved to Atlanta. I continued my studies while I was on maternity leave. I got licensed, started my marketing plan, which my husband's heavily involved in. And I just knew that I was not going to stay there long. I really didn't want to go back to work after my maternity leave, but I had to. But I said if I sold at least one house while I was on maternity leave, I was going to leave. That didn't happen. But I did stay there for another year, and I left April 1st of 2022.
Wow. I never realized how like similar our stories are because that's
Really?
very similar in how I got into real estate as well. Yeah. Mine was a little, so I worked in an analytical lab. Anybody who watches this channel knows, like I worked there for 10 years and I worked my way from the bottom up, and the position that I left actually the person before me had a chemical engineering degree, which I don't have any college experience. So I worked my
Neither
way
do
up. Yeah.
I.
And so I was there for 10 years. I went on maternity leave for my daughter, my first one, my first child. And when I came back, there was a whole new management team, and I was fired 4 months later. So
Wow.
yeah, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like, what can I do? I didn't, it wasn't like I was chasing real estate. For me, it was what kind of certification can I get? Or, I mean, I knew I couldn't do a degree in a short time, but what could I get that was essentially quick, cheap, and potentially could make me a lot of money? And that's how I ended up here. Because
Checks all those boxes.
yeah, it was hard for me to look for a new for that same position because A, I didn't have the degree, and they had me sign a non-compete. So
Oh, wow.
it was really, really hard. But I love that there's like those similarities. I knew there was a reason why we
Yeah, I know. We never knew that.
I
Out of all
know.
these years.
I know, it's so crazy, but I think your story like it resonates with a lot of people too, because as a mom you're trying to look for what's best, and especially like you're in this job where your livelihood is dependent on somebody else, like they need to see your worth, they need to decide what you're actually supposed to make. It's like, yeah, I don't think I could ever go back to that. So
Yeah, I definitely can. And up until that point in the job that I was in, like I had been there for 10 years, and I was used to getting promoted like every 2 years. I
Yeah.
was used to upward movement. And when it stopped and it stalled, I was just like, you don't know millennials, okay? Because we can make money right now on YouTube. And I used to tell
very
management
true.
all that all the time when we're talking about hiring and retaining employees. Like, we're not the only option. You have to be competitive. You have to treat people right. And if
Yep.
they don't feel like they're being treated right or paid their time, they're going to go. They can make money at home.
Yep.
And that's what I did. I showed them. And my manager, he was really the manager that I worked with when I left. He was really nice about it. He was talking to my district manager. They had a conversation about me. And my DM was like, she'll be back in a year.
No.
And one of them said, no, I think she'll be back in 6 months. And I was like, oh, I can show you better than I can tell you, because I don't care if I fail at real estate. I'm not.
Exactly.
Not
Exactly.
I have more skills. I can find something else to do.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I'm so glad that you are here. And you did build your business primarily through YouTube and social media. So what content strategies started generating real results for you first? Was it YouTube, or was it like Instagram?
So definitely YouTube. I started my YouTube channel as soon as I got licensed, like within the few couple months after I got licensed. And it was my husband that petitioned me to do YouTube because he had a YouTube channel. He had a very successful YouTube channel. and it's still going. He just doesn't work on it anymore. But he was like, we can start you a YouTube channel. He showed me, or actually I showed him when we were talking about moving back to Atlanta. We were looking at houses on YouTube, and I'm like, oh, I found these houses. And he was like, you should do this. Like, this is an agent who's posting content on YouTube. We're looking for a house. We found them.
Right.
And I was like, nobody's calling this agent. Nobody's doing that. And he was like, I promise you they are. I didn't believe him. I wanted to cold call. I was like, this is going to be something like I can have multiple conversations. The more I call, the better I can get. I've worked at a telemarketing center before doing cold calls. I can definitely do it for my business.
Right.
And he was like, well, I think you should try YouTube. And so as a compromise, I did both. So I started my YouTube channel. So on my off days, I would cold call for an hour because that's all I could do. That's all I could manage.
Yes.
Being nervous and everything. So I cold call for an hour, and then we would go and film a house. And he would, the first few videos I edited, I filmed it with my phone, I edited it. And then once he got involved, he started seeing like, okay, we're getting some views. The ones you did on your iPhone, they're getting like a lot of views. So let me do, cause he's also a professional photographer and videographer.
Oh, nice.
So all in one, he edits, he does that. And his business before was taking small businesses and giving them like branding packages. So he used to do logos, websites, and graphic design for small businesses.
Nice.
So he was like, he had been out of the client work, and he had took himself on as a client, and that's where he started his YouTube channel. So he essentially did the same thing for me in my YouTube channel. So family business, we have the real estate business, and then we have the marketing business. So it kind of all flowed together, and I was just like, okay, I'll do what you say, even though I don't believe in it. And I also, at the same time, I was posting on Instagram, but this was mainly to reach my sphere.
Yeah.
And so if we're talking about like where I got a lead from first, technically it was Instagram/Facebook. I grouped them all together because my family like reached out to me, my best friend, those were my first clients, and I reached them through my Instagram, my social media. But my YouTube also started taking off too, and they were bringing me in people that I didn't know. And to this day, YouTube brings in the most leads. They bring in the higher average dollar of purchase price. And I still try my best at Instagram. I'm pumping it up now. I'm actually getting more. My goal has always been with Instagram and social media to get people that I don't know, because I easily reach the people that I did know, and I get a lot of referrals from there. But now I'm starting to get people that I don't know. It took me like 2 years to finally get some traction and some leads. It happened last year was finally when I started getting leads and stuff from and had some viral videos on Instagram. And I'm still working at it to this day. But YouTube has been the most consistent for me, my bread and butter.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I finally dove in this last year, and I'm starting to see results now. But I think it's great. You do some really good stuff, and that's nice to have your husband know like the back end of the like video and editing, because that's where a lot of people struggle. That's where I struggled. So
people think I have an unfair advantage, but
so
I still have to pay. I pay for the services.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, for instance, right now, our child is sick, so we can't do anything.
Right.
Like, we're both here, and it kind of ties us up. And then sometimes, he's just like, we get into those arguments where like, he thinks I should do this with the business. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, you never listen to me. I'm like, well, I don't want to listen to you. I want to do what I want to do.
I'm just paying you to edit.
Exactly. But I can't. So, in some ways, not doing it or doing it yourself and not having that person, there's some upside to it.
Absolutely.
I
would take
don't be jealous of me.
Full advantage of that. So it doesn't.
But whatever works for you. If you figure out how to edit yourself, do that. If you hire somebody on Upwork to do that, if you live with someone who knows how to edit, or you can teach them how to edit, then do that. I just work with what works best for you. Absolutely. In your situation, and don't look at anybody else's situation like they have an advantage because they got X, Y, Z.
100%. And so, touching more on YouTube and Instagram, you did join EXP in the Wolfpack because of the value that that brings. So, what specific value stood out to you the most?
Probably the Social Agent Academy in itself and learning that it was at no extra charge.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, sign me up because I was looking at Compass and I was looking at EXP. I liked EXP because at the time I was working. I wanted to be in a brokerage where I wasn't required to come into office for meetings. So the cloud-based brokerage model really sold me on EXP. And I knew some people that was already at the company.
So, you joined EXP and the Wolfpack because of the value. So, what specific value stood out to you the most with your plan?
So the fact that the Social Agent Academy, that's really what I was looking for because, like I said, my husband told me I should do YouTube. I found Mike originally on YouTube and I was following him. And when I found out that, once I joined EXP under him, it would be free. And I was like, I thought that was a really good thing. And I was also looking at Compass versus EXP. And with the job that I was in, I knew that I needed to have some kind of place where I could have a flexible schedule. I didn't want to have to report to an office for meetings. And I wanted to keep everything as virtual as possible because we're coming out of COVID and I got used to virtual.
Yeah.
And so I did like that. And so I knew that I was going to be joining with EXP. And once I found Mike and, the Social Agent Academy, and it was in line with what I wanted to do and how I wanted to build my business, it was pretty much a no-brainer. And then the fact that it was free when you joined at EXP with the Wolfpack, it was just kind of like a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much value and people pay a lot of money for that kind of training. So it's definitely, it's very enticing for sure. I love our trainings and I love that they're always changing. They're innovative and updated. Yeah, I agree with you. And so another thing that a lot of agents struggle with is, especially with like trying to do things online and having a online presence, is consistency. So what helps you stay disciplined long enough to see that momentum when you first got started?
It was pretty much that I gave myself no other choice. Like I said, my husband really believed in it, so I felt like I did have to give it a fair chance, and it started to pay off almost immediately. Where from just views and I had a beauty channel before and like the most I ever had was like 79 followers. And so I was used to my videos getting like 12, 25, maybe 50 views. If I had 100 views on video, I was just like taken aback. Like, wow, I reached 100 people. So the fact that when we posted the real estate content and it was getting 100 views, 200 views within a couple of days, I'm like, oh, wow, this is really gonna, like, hopefully I get some calls from it, but at least I'm getting views and people are seeing me and I'm having, these conversations with multiple people. And the video is going to be out there forever. So it's going to create content and I hope somebody calls me. And, within a few months, somebody did. So once I started seeing those results, it was just pretty easy to stick through. But I also wasn't naive to the fact that it was going to take some time and consistency, and I didn't have anything better to do.
Right.
And in the meantime, to supplement it, I did cold call because, I did want to make a deal. And that was the first deal that I actually closed. That wasn't myself because we did buy a house first. So I was my first client. But after that, my first deal that I closed was a buyer. It ended up being a buyer from someone that I cold called. That's how I got my first deal. And by that time, I'm posting one video a week. My channel is getting successful. I'm working with some family members, so I'm gaining momentum. And by the time I mentioned before, I left my job on April 1st, 2022. By April 14th, I had my first buyer that called me from YouTube that we got under contract. They literally called and said, hey, we saw your videos. We want to work with you. We'll be in town on Friday. Can you show us? And we like this builder and we want to look in this area. Can you show us? Yes.
Love that. Love that.
And that is really how I found my niche, because the first buyer that called me was someone moving from Illinois to Atlanta. They were
Yeah.
moving for a job. They wanted new construction. I said
Yep.
it was pretty much the perfect setup. They didn't have any problem with financing. They were very easy when selecting a house. They had a motivation to be here other than they just wanted to move
Yeah.
because of the job, right? So that's actually how I found my niche from my first client from YouTube.
I love it. That's so
Mhm.
amazing. And
Yes, yes, yes.
now, and now you're in the top
Here we are.
5% of Atlanta realtors, closing
Yep.
30 deals last year, which is amazing.
Yes.
So, what systems did you put in place to handle that level of production?
So the one thing that I really, really, really think helped me get to that point was hiring a transaction coordinator
Yes.
because up until that point, I did not have one. I was talking to Suman, and he was like, "Marty, you need to have a TC. You are doing too much work." I'm like, "No, but I like it. Like I have time to do it. It takes me less than an hour to do it." He was like, "Mm-mm." And so I was like, "Okay, fine." I found a TC. It was okay, but when I found one that really worked with, and she's actually part of Wolfpack too.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, yes, I got a referral. I found her on our women's call that we have. I just was
Yes.
talking about how I needed a new TC, and she came in. She's so professional. She made me look like a rock star to my clients, and she completely took over that contract to close portion for me that I was spending so much time on. I didn't realize how much time I was spending on it. So because I had that taken care of, I didn't have to worry about being out on showings and needing to get some paperwork signed and trying to figure out when we close. It just happens so effortlessly, and I didn't even realize how much of an impact that would make. That I was able to put all that extra energy into taking on listing appointments and to doing more buyer consultations and to do more showings, and that's really what one of the main systems that catapulted me. And I'll be honest, I had some systems in place before, prior to that, especially when I started. My drip campaigns were all set up and my onboarding process was set up. And last year, I did none of that. And I really felt it in the summertime. When the summertime hit and I was having 10, 12-hour days, I felt that lack of systems. And
Yeah.
so from May of last year all the way till end of October, I was going, going, going. I was really just overworked, I think, and just October got a little bit better, but it was still a lot going on. But I had more listings at the time. But up until then, I was like very buyer heavy. I was overwhelmed. I was not a nice person, when I come home, and I can only imagine how worse that would have been had I not had a TC. So this year I started putting more systems in place. I'm in the process of doing that now, and just like treating everybody the same and making them go through the process. Because even though like you're afraid to miss a lead, right? Or you're afraid if you ask too much from a lead up front that they won't want to work with you anymore. And I just had to first of all, that's a scarcity mindset. So I had to recognize that that was a scarcity mindset. And that's not usually the type of mindset I operate in. But I
Right.
also had to realize that this is a business, and businesses have rules and they have processes. And I need to make them so easy where I can implement them. So it's not going to be a barrier for
Yeah.
me to get somebody to do this, but make it so that when they do come in and I do get busy, that I have a process in place and I'm, not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
100%. I actually, this last year I dove into creating systems as well, better
Mhm.
systems, because I want a well-oiled machine. I don't want
Mhm.
these, a roller coaster. I want something that consistently runs. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much you need that in order
Mhm.
to scale. So I've been, in real estate for 8 years. And last year
Okay.
was the first year that I hired a TC. And I did scale in volume, but it was like, I'm like, why did I wait so long?
I ask myself that same question. Well, I know why. I like having a little overhead, honestly.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
try to have
Well,
my business
and
overhead as
yeah,
low as possible.
yeah. For me, it was
But it pays
more
for
just,
itself.
what are my clients going to think? Like, I don't want them to think that I'm going to pass them off to somebody. Because
Mhm.
when I first got into real estate, I was part of a big team, and
Oh,
that's what our team lead would do. He would meet with the client, and then that would be the last time they ever saw him because he has
oh.
a showing agent, TC, I'm like, I don't want to be that person. So, but I do think it's really important to have a good TC once you find somebody that you mesh with and that they have their own systems in place too, and they're willing to share that system so that you guys can stay on the same page. I think that's wonderful. So I'm happy
Yeah,
that you found somebody that you really like.
it's worked out beautifully.
Good, good. Okay, I got a couple more questions and then we can wrap this up. So for agents who want to build a social media driven business, what should they focus on first?
They should focus on who their ideal client is. I think that's really, and I struggle with it because I'm like, making content, trying to see what sticks. And then I realize if you're making content for everyone, you're making content for no one. So trying to figure out who your ideal client is, make an avatar of them, and get so good at knowing who they are, what they like, what they be into, that's the only content that you make.
Right.
And I recently learned you cannot say the wrong thing to the right client,
Right.
because
That's true.
the right client is going to want to work with you. They're going to love your personality. There's, as I always say, there's somebody for everybody. And that's true with real estate too. And I was so, like I said, going back to the scarcity mindset, I didn't want to miss a lead. I wanted every opportunity to turn a lead into a client. And sometimes when I would do that, I would work with people that I would never want to work with because they made the transaction. It's so difficult.
Yeah.
And you're like getting paid thousands of dollars and that's still not enough because this person is that difficult. That's how I know this is not, like, all money isn't good money.
Yeah.
So by me focusing on speaking to my audience, who my ideal client is, I'll have a better experience through the transaction. I can help them better. They like me. I don't have to pull teeth to get a 5-star review. They're going to refer people to me. And it's a much better way to spend my time. But it all starts with figuring out who you're talking to or who you want to work with, what transactions make you the happiest, and figuring out how to get more of those transactions.
Yeah, I agree. I agree so much. And thank you for that because I think it's really important, especially for those who want to replicate your success in the next 12 months. And that's a really good piece of advice that they could use. And it's very true because it's easier to work with like-minded people. And sometimes it's worth the piece to not take specific clients, refer them out.
Yes, there's some people that I say if they're keeping you up at night, it's not, and not necessarily because the transaction is hard. It's the personality.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
I am so grateful again for you being here. Your story is such a powerful example of what happens when strategy meets commitment. So thank you for sharing that so openly. And for anyone watching, drop your biggest takeaway in the comments, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future interviews. If you'd like to build a modern real estate business powered by content and community, click the link in the description to book a call with us to possibly partner up. I will also have all of Marty's links in the description below so you can follow along with her as well. And that's it. Thank you so much, Marty.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.